So as we think about our landscape, we've talked a lot about a lot of different things here. So some of the materials I have a brush, paintbrush. I have some watercolor. This is kind of older watercolors, but it works. Those little trays that you get from the store are fine too for this. You're going to probably want a pencil. But as far as your media, you can use watercolor or you don't have to. I have some colored pencils here you could use. Again, grocery store colored pencils are fun and fine. I also have some gel pens that are kind of cool. Sharpies, all kinds of colors. So you could work for this project however you really want. I want you to think about some different ways you could do this. I'm going to just start with some drawings. So I went through and thought about all the things we talked about with the layers. So I started with one drawing and I just started, and you can see, I just started kind of playing around with layers inside. This is actually a portrait format, but I just kind of played around with some layers because that one artist that we looked at towards the end had that real long, tall portrait, and I thought that was really kind of cool. So just some layers. Now, there's not much interest going on here. So that's what you see these little vertical lines that I have coming through here. And I thought those would be cool trees. So I'm going to erase a little bit of this. And back to the first video we did, I can kind of think about a pine tree, and they have a triangular-ish, if that's a word, shape. And here's my trunk. It's going to go off the page, but I'm still going to see some landscape, just like we talked about before in the first video, through there. So I see peaks of the landscape through this tree. Okay, and maybe I'll add another one, littler, further away, but kind of next to it, and just hinting at another one. So now I've got a little bit more of a focal point with that sketch. It's not just the layers. I could add a road, I could add a path, I could think about the patterns that we talked about. I could also, in my mind, I was thinking about some kind of a shadow here of these to fill that foreground a little bit better. So it would just be a duplicate or a repeat of this. So now I've got, can I zoom a little bit on there? You've got a little bit of a shadow there. So let's talk about this next one. And again, I started thinking about those triangle shapes that we did in the very first drawing. Triangles and layers and some kind of a path. So if you see this, if you missed that video, this is a triangle. Okay, and then another layer with another triangle. I'm not really drawing this path or river or road or whatever you want it to be. I'm drawing the land. I'm drawing the negative space around it. And then I just kind of played with layers again. And then some vertical lines for maybe some clumps of trees. Again, now those are really super tall. Let's bring them down here a little bit. And they're going to be a little smaller further away. And I could add whatever kind of tree I want to make it. Again, just not a lollipop tree. Don't want any lollipop trees. So I'm just kind of abstracting it, and I can do some erasing. There. Now I have two trees as one. They like each other. They're standing really close. This tree might be lighter. I'm not going to color anything in just yet or shade it in just yet. So you have a lot of options. Now I have some trees that are kind of leading my eye back into this. I'm going to bring this trunk down a little bit and it almost just becomes a shape, doesn't it? And another one. And then I could add way, way, way far away some groups of trees there. Okay? So I have some interest, my eyes winding back, and the trees are bringing my eyes back into the drawing. So that's another option. Again, just kind of playing with some things. I was looking outside my window, and I have my grass, and then there's a driveway that comes from my house out to another lane that comes back this way. And then there's another driveway, but I don't want to draw two driveways. So I'm going to just look at that land back there. And then there was this layer. Then I started thinking there's a lot of apple trees out here. So I started thinking and looking at the shapes of some of the apple trees. Vincent van Gogh, who we looked at in one of the other videos, loved to draw apple trees. So just going to kind of hint at that shape of the apple tree, and then maybe another one here next to it. And they kind of splay out as they get old, and these are old apple trees here. Okay, and then the neighbors have this little, they just got goats. So they've got this little shed that's back there. So I kind of drew that little shed in, and then there's a little fence. And the fence is coming, and again, it gets a little smaller as it moves away. And the posts get closer together as they get further away. So there's my little fence line. So this little apple orchard and front yard kind of thing. I was looking at some pictures of a trip we took on the Blue Ridge Parkway. So I was standing up on this hill, and I had right under me this wonderful layer of trees. Okay, you can see the layers. And then there was another layer of trees behind it. Kind of disappeared down into here. Then there's some flat land, kind of some green space. And then there's hundreds and hundreds of layers up there when you're standing up there. So you got some layers. And then your mountains. Looking Glass Mountain right here. And it's always shiny because it's watery. Up close, I was going to add a couple trees. I kind of like to start with those vertical lines to interrupt and overlap all of this other stuff. So I'm going to keep it in a group. I'm pressing a little harder so you can see it now, and I'll erase it in a second. So let's erase those layers behind it, because this is overlapping all of that, right? There. You can get rid of that vertical line as well. Try to kind of keep it shapy. Okay, so you can kind of see what I've been doing with some sketches here. I've got a bunch of different sketches. So really what you need to do after you kind of play around with different ideas in observing and looking and having pictures in front of you is come up with an idea. So these are a little small to do my painting on. So I'm going to work on a final drawing now. I'm going to turn the page and work on an actual final drawing. What do you think I should do? I kind of like this one. I like that shadow. There's an artist named Erin Hansen, and she plays around with these really cool shadows, but I really like this too. I want to go to all these places. I already go here a lot, so that's my house or my front yard. So let's maybe kind of play around with this one. I think I'm going to tear it off so that we can see it, refer back to it when I'm working. I'm going to do a few of these for you because I want you to kind of think about what you might be doing with your art. And it's really up to you. I want you to explore some new things and try some new things. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my frame. I could use this whole frame, this whole picture, or whole page for my piece. But again, I'm going to start with my layers, and I'm going to press a little harder than I normally would so that you can see it as the viewer of this video. Let me come down here. There we go. So I'm going to draw this one, I think. So I'm going to start with that first layer. I'm going to get a little lighter here. Let's see. Fairly close to what I had. Not exact, but I'm not too worried about that. Throw some layers in here. Just kind of play around with some layers. They get smaller and more faded. And then I've got these way back here layers. Remember, mountains are not triangles. Mountains are not triangles. This is similar to what I have here. So right about here, I'm going to go ahead and add that vertical line for my tree. I don't know if you can see that. I'll darken it so you can see it. Is that better? And another vertical line right next to it. I'll make it a little shorter, but I want it to go over top of this. And then we'll plant a tree. I don't want it in the middle of the page, so we'll plant a tree here. It's really nice when you can plant trees wherever you want. This is way easier than the way we plant trees here at my house. Just draw a line and draw it. Okay, so let's start with the basic shape. You can see a little bit. I'm trying to keep things into a shape right now. And I'm going to come down to the trunk, anchor it by giving it a little darker line. Don't make the trunk straight, please, because they're not straight. Again, remember we're going to have some peaks of landscape through. Keep it very irregular. And you can erase all this stuff inside. And have a nice little tree. You might see parts of the tree trunk or parts of the branches here in some spots. See that? You get that a lot in a tree. Okay, let's give it a friend, a tree friend. A little different shape, maybe wider. We all come in different shapes and sizes. So do trees. They own it. We don't always own our shape or size, do we? Squigglies, peaks of air through there, and we'll put them close together again. There. Figure out maybe a shadow. I might go ahead and do this kind of a shadow that we saw earlier, that we drew earlier, coming across here later. So let's get this other tree in first. A little more faded. I do want it to overlap the back mountain. Okay, and this guy, let's make him a wide tree. What do you think? He still needs to be smaller though. He'd be a good tree to sit under and drink lemonade, right? And then a way back tree that you probably can't hardly see what I'm doing there. Okay, so now I have some trees. So a little boring up close, don't you think? Not much going on. Let me darken these lines. I'm going to go ahead and think about that shadow coming across here. It might fade. It's going to connect. And then fade. Long evening shadow. So if I have it there, my sun's coming from over here, so I need to keep it going all in the same direction. I'm going to have shadow here. That shadow is going to get tucked back in there. And a little bit of a shadow there. Okay, so I like to start, I'm going to start with some watercolor. And then I'm going to go back in with a lot of different options. You could go back in with a pen, one that dries. You could go back in with some colored pencils that I have here. You could go back in with gel pens. Gel pens are fun to put over watercolor too. Or a little bit of everything. It doesn't matter. So let me sort myself here. Get my picture back in there. And I'm going to start by getting my paint wet. Notice I'm just putting one little drip. No matter what kind of paint you use, you should always get it a little wet first. The stuff in the long little square things, same thing, okay? Grocery store, the guys you buy at the grocery store, the craft store, whatever, doesn't matter. You be you. Let's brush this off a little bit. So I'm gonna just kind of keep it general. Now, have fun with the colors. I'm gonna start, test my color. Whoop, there's no color there. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. You don't need to see the palette, right? Okay, a little bit of blue, far away. Can you even see that? Yeah, you can see it. Now, the wetter, when you're using watercolor, the wetter your water or brushes or paper is, the less control you're gonna have. Also, the lighter your pigment will be. Because water waters it down and lightens it. But I just wanted a little bit of blue here. And while it's wet, if I want to pop in a little more blue, I can. It's kind of nice. Remember I said pushing things back and lightening it? So I'm going to go with a little bit of blue-violet back in here. Actually, that's further away, isn't it? So, ooh, that's dark. That's not an emergency though, because I can easily add some water to it. Notice, see that little white line I left? Do you know why I left that white line? Remember I said when watercolor is kind of wet and juicy, it goes it goes where it's wet. Okay, see, it's not coming here because it's dry. But if I touched it to here, to this wet area, it would definitely go there. So it goes where it's wet. So I left a little white line because I wasn't being very patient. You should let it dry. That's your best bet. I'm kind of staying solid back here. I'm not doing any variations. I just want you to explore the paint a little bit. This isn't really a true watercolor painting. We're kind of doing a coloring book style. It's all one color. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Again, like I said, you be you. I don't usually paint like this though, so I'm not being me. But I want to make it nice and feasible for you to do. Okay, so you can see the difference, that this looks further away than this. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. This is cooler, it's bluer, this has the purple in it, which has red in it. Okay, so as I come forward, I'm going to take, and I'm not going green, I'm still going blue, but I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to my green. Warmer. Still blue, kinda. I guess I'm fibbing, huh? So I went green. I don't want it to be that green. So I'm going to add a little water to it and pull it up a little bit and go bluer. There we go. Now, they're running together right there a little bit. That's okay, because remember I said we're going to go back into it with some other media. Media means watercolors or colored pencils or gel pens or whatever you're going to use. Okay, let's go green here. Still a little blue-green, but brighter. See, warmer. And I could go brighter with more yellow in it. There, that's better. Just painting the layers. My blue and green are fighting. What's going to be blue and what's going to be green? There. So going to go even greener up here. A little more yellow, green. And again, remember, like I said, we're not really watercolor painting, we're just kind of coloring with the watercolors right now, because we're going to add other things to this. So I'm going to start with yellow here. And the reason I said that is because I wanted to tell you why your grass is not green. It's yellow. Because remember, this is just one step. And a friend of mine used to tell kids that the more steps you have in your artwork, the more interesting it is. So this is the first step. Super yellow back there, isn't it? I'm going to go yellow, strong yellow up here. And then add a little water and green to the as I go back. There. I'm not worried about the little white spaces or anything. So I think this should just be like a path or an area that you might walk on instead of water, because then I'm going to lose my shadow, because you don't have much of a shadow on water. And if, as you get to know me a little bit here, those of you who do know me a little bit, I never use brown paint or black paint. You can make it. So I like to start with like kind of fun stuff. So I'm going to start with orange. I'm going to keep it a little light because remember, we're going to do a lot of different things to it. But I'm going to go a little stronger up little brighter up here. And as I go back, it's going to get softer. Remember the things we've been talking about with our videos. So I'm not even going to add more color to my brush. I'm just going to push some of that water back into here. Ta-da! Okay, so it definitely got, whoop, my paper's bowing a little bit. Okay. Now for the trees. Actually, I think I will do the sky. So I'm going to go with another blue, a little bit of a different blue. This is called cerulean blue. It's a great sky color. So I'm going to get that juicy a little bit. And skies are interesting because on a sunny day, which is not now, a sky is very strong and bold at the top above you. So the color is much deeper way up here. So notice I'm going to just, you can't see my water, but I'm going to clean my brush a little bit, not much, just a little bit, and keep it wet and just make a line underneath what I just did. It's still wet. So what's happening is it's pulling down that color and fading and doing what we call a gradation. Gradation, just like a value scale, goes from light to dark. So as I get close to my horizon line, it gets lighter. Just kind of that rule that we've been talking about, right? It gets a little lighter, more faded, closer to the horizon line. So now you have that idea of space. So now for the trees. Trees are cool because they're all different. You might have a very dark green. I don't want anything to be too opaque. Opaque means you cannot see through it. You want water with your watercolor. Okay, so I can still see paper through there. It's not like the temper paint you use in school. Sometimes you don't see the paper through there. So I'm going to go with a different green here. See that? A little bit different green here. A little more water. There, that's nice. Do they look the same? Can't tell. I use different greens and different blues. Gonna come forward with it. Now we have some, as we work, we have some spaces where we can start adding some patterns, maybe some lines. Let's connect that. This tree, I'm going to make very yellow. Yellow, you have to be careful with watercolor. It gets opaque very easily because you want it to be strong because it's a light color, but then it gets opaque and you want to keep watercolor transparent. Okay, so you want to be able to see through it. Transparent means see-through, like a window. You want your windows to be transparent and your clothes to be opaque, right? That's how I remember it. I want my clothes definitely to be opaque. So I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to go back to my brown color that I always use, which is orange or red. And I'm going to pop in and let the trunk bleed a little bit. That's kind of always fun to let the trunk bleed with that. And oh, I don't know, this might be too late. Oh, look at that. And this is a nice little more faded area here. And I'm going to anchor it by making just a little bit of a line or shadow. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just do it now. So my shadow. I love to make shadows purple. I'm kind of a color person. And I'm doing this purple right over top of this yellow. So if you know anything about color, purple and yellow are going to make kind of a muddy brown color, which is just what happened. But right in here, I've got a nice purple shape, kind of a shadow shape, right? Coming through here. And you can kind of see that it looks like the sun's hitting it. These trees very nicely. And my shadow comes across the sky or ground from the sky. All one shape. Nice. Kind of nice, huh? Okay, so some more purple, a little more faded here, so I'm going to blot it and come back and just hinting at that shape, right? So now I have another shadow. Looks like the sun's going down or coming up, whatever. So my very furthest away tree, there's two of them, huh? I'm going to make much bluer. Now, the beauty of watercolor, sometimes it's a headache that it runs when the colors touch, but sometimes, now I'm not going to even make a brown trunk there because it's so far away, it's all one color, but sometimes when it's wet, you want it to run, and I'm going to just add a little bit of green in there to that blue. Let it dance around in there a little bit. Look at that. Now I have a far away tree. And my very furthest away tree is going to be very faint and light, and it's way back here. And with very little detail. And I'm just going to for my shadows, because you don't have much shadow. Soften a little bit. So there's the first part of this painting. So as we look at this dried watercolor, we talked about all of the space things and the color, and we've got all that hard work done, so now it's time to have fun. So you have a lot of different options. You could go back in, like I said before, with more watercolor. You've got the basics down. You could add more shading and more values and more interest. You could come back in with some colored pencils. If you were to do that, you might, let's see, start some values. Or we looked at the one artist, the Gonzalez, that drew into layers. You know, she liked those wavy lines coming through and repeating things. You could make things very, very abstract. You could do some outlining. If you're doing abstract, you would like trace this and make that real strong and then fill it with something, or just keep kind of almost doodling with it until it turns into something different. This is defining it a little bit with the colored pencils. You could do that. What you do now is really up to you, or how you even started is up to you. I thought I would play around with some gel pens or colored pens. You could do the same thing that we're doing here with colored pencils as well. Just keep them sharp. Any colored pens would work just fine for this. So some of them, these are sparkly, some of them aren't. They have kind of a heavy line. I just thought I would start playing around with some of these shadows at the beginning. And remember the artist that we looked at, well, Grant Wood did some of it, but kind of filled things. Vincent van Gogh did. Can't remember the name of the other artist. I'd have to go back to watch my video, so you can too. Just thinking about if I did this, nothing's precious. Another friend of mine keeps saying that about art when he's teaching, that nothing's really all that precious, so be brave. So I might do a pattern inside this whole shape of dots. I might take, as I outline things and change things up, I like this red for the road. Remember I told you I don't do brown. So I might continue these lines, these wavy lines. Like Grant Wood's plowed field at the beginning, the first one we looked at. Everyone is going to come down here. Oops. And be very different. Now I have to think about what's going to happen to my lines as I come back in space. Are they going to wrap around back here? Or these lines would come up through here and then wrap around this way, right? But I'm going to make them kind of fade as they get further away. Maybe come back through. If for some reason I want to skip over the shadow, what would happen if will the shadow stay if we go over it on the faraway shadow. Something to think about, right? These lines need to be closer together back here. And remember, Vincent van Gogh did some fun things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with this a little bit, and you'll watch, and then I'll speed it up. So you don't have to watch every painstaking line that I make. So I'm just going to draw, and then the rest of the video will be sped up, and we'll see what you think. So I wrapped it up. Not in love with it, but I had fun with it. So that's what this is about. And let's see, come down here. I don't know if you can see the lines up in here in the sky. I'll take a close-up picture of it. The video doesn't seem to want to capture all of the details here. There's parts I like. I'm not really horribly happy with this area up here. But remember, we're just exploring and we're having fun with it. So I could come back in with more paint. I could come back in with more texture. I could come back in with some colored pencils, maybe, and really pop this, because this right here is kind of strong compared to the rest. So maybe we're not to say that we only have to use one media or two media or three media. I like to use a lot of different things. So I'm going to come back in with some greens maybe, and yellows, and kind of keep shapes. But I was really super geometric up here with straight lines and curves and things, and then I got a little organic down below, so maybe that's why I didn't like it so much. But I'm going to keep playing with it. Again, it's not precious. I have nothing to lose. Had some yellows in here maybe. Maybe that's what it needs, some more warm, because the red's super strong. So just kind of play with it, and I want you to take this idea and make whatever you want out of it. So you can, if I were you, I would start with some sketches and even some practice work with your pens or your markers or your watercolor or whatever right onto here as well. And you can see where up here I kind of tried colors out and I kind of played around with some different things. So make a landscape. The idea is to make things look far or close, and kind of play around with some marks and different media, and see what you can get. Have fun with it though, that's the big thing. Have fun and make art and be creative. We'll see you next time.